Welcome to the McCombs Wellness Collective podcast, where we aim to improve overall health and wellness of the UT McCombs MBA community through promoting healthy habits and sharing personal wellness stories. Many stressors can emerge during an MBA, and we hope that this podcast will help you prioritize your health during your time at McCombs and onward through the rest of your life. All right, welcome to the Wellness Collective's new weekly podcast. So the purpose of this podcast is to get people to know our fellow MBA classmates and how they think about their wellness journey. I think wellness is super important. It's not talked about much. So we want to bring that out to the open, make people feel comfortable talking about it and giving people like advice, recommendations, and our thoughts on wellness. So for the first episode, we're joined by Todd Thurston here, first year MBA. Todd, thanks so much for taking that leadership role in the Wellness Collective and being the first guest on the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for setting it up, and I'm excited to begin this journey with you.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to start out with a little bit about yourself. So, you know, we've got a pretty large class. Still people are learning about everyone. So where are you from and what got you interested to go do an MBA here at McCombs?
Yeah, no, so I'm from Manikin-Sabot, Virginia. I grew up there my whole life and basically went up the road to University of Virginia in Charlottesville. And I was a member of the polo team there. That took a large part of my time during my academic experience at UVA, and actually traveled to Argentina to go play and train after my first year, and ended up living with some baseball players when I came back. And I remember sitting at the table with them, and they said, we don't want to look back when we're 30 and say we didn't try to be professional athletes. And I took that to heart, and I put everything I could into being a professional athlete. And for me, it was being a professional polo player and horse trainer. And I did that for almost 3 years after University of Virginia, and I traveled pretty much all over the country and the world. I was in Colorado, Texas, Florida for a good amount of time, Virginia, New York, spent a lot of time in Argentina, and had a really great journey, learned a lot of amazing things from interacting with a ton of different cultures and individuals, and building a lot of amazing relationships. But I came to the point after those 3 years that I wanted to use my degree and kind of close a chapter in my life that was really important to me, but kind of completely change gears. And for me, it meant reinventing myself as an athlete. I'm sure there's other people in the class that identify with this as well. Is when you're an athlete, you are the sport that you play, and when you haven't put much time into thinking about something and a new identity, it's a bit tough. So it required a lot of introspection and thoughts, and I got lucky and kind of did some networking through my polo community, and got a shot to work at a telecommunications company in Boca Raton, Florida, by the name of Vertical Bridge. And I started as an intern. I was 26 years old, had my UVA degree, and I was filing documents in the file room. And it was definitely a humbling experience, but it was an experience that was a really big part of the journey that I had there. I interned that summer and was able to develop some value for the company, and was fortunate enough to get a full-time position there, and kind of rose through the ranks from being an analyst and as part of a sales team. I was kind of helping with renegotiating ground lease contracts and buyouts of ground leases in the cell tower industry. Yeah. And kind of rose through the ranks and ended up being a director of real estate development for the department there. And I'd always wanted to kind of take the next step in kind of my academic experience. At UVA, admittedly, I was focused on being an athlete and not the academics. I got a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish. But I kind of, throughout my journey of reinventing myself, I loved learning about business and learning how did these great leaders become these great people, have had so much influence and inspired so many people, and along those lines, how have they built great businesses? So I took a long time to study for the standardized tests, and but I ended up taking them, and that was obviously a big step to applying to grad schools, and applied to a couple schools, and ended up really liking McCombs a lot for Austin. I wanted to be in a young professional city, not too big. I'm a country boy, so I can't handle the big cities. And I had visited the year before, and they had a really great culture. Culture is super important to me. Very team oriented, very putting others first culture. And just got really fortunate and lucky to get acceptance here at McCombs last spring, and here I am.
Well, I'm really glad you chose McCombs, and I'm fascinated by the classmates we have here, and for yourself, getting to play at the highest level of your sport. I think that's every kid's dream, is that they want to be an athlete at the top level. And at some point, most people, their career comes to an end before they reach that. And for you reached that, but you still had to figure out, okay, I can't do this for the rest of my life.
Right.
What's next?
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine how difficult a question that is to handle. And it seemed like you handled it very well. You went on you took your that piece of humble pie, took a role as an intern, and worked all your way up to now where you're in one of the top business schools in the country. Was your wellness? Did you focus on wellness during that transition, or when did you start getting interested in wellness? And how did you approach that transition from being a professional polo player?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it's been a fundamental part of my life. Just as an athlete, you're used to having a lot of structure and goals. You're very goal oriented, and a lot of discipline to achieving, whether it's wins or some new personal best. And in sports, there's winners and losers. That's one of the things, one of the fundamental lessons you learn as an athlete. You're not going to win every game, and you got to build a lot of fortitude. And the wellness aspect was always super important to me. And during the process, it was not an easy process. There was a lot of ups and downs. There was a lot of moments that I was leaning on my family and my friends for support. And I think throughout that process, it was, for me, a lot of it goes to how do you become the best version of yourself? And that was always my mindset as an athlete. And I took that when I made the transition. When you're coming to work, how are you taking care of your mind? How are you taking care of your spirit? How are you taking care of your body? And that was a fundamental kind of foundation that helped me kind of take that next step when I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. If you told me that I was going to get into cell towers, I'd say you're crazy. I didn't even think about the business. So it's that kind of mentality that I took that definitely set me in positions to have success at the next step in my journey.
And what sort of resources would you attribute that mindset to? Because I know a lot of people maybe have never even thought about wellness.
Yeah.
Are there particular books or podcasts or videos that you really, really enjoyed or recommend?
Yeah, I have so many. I don't even know where to start. But I think first and foremost, it starts with the people that you surround yourself with. I had a really close-knit family and a very supportive family throughout the process of being an athlete. I think that was super important. They always said, go for your dreams, and we're going to support you every step of the way. And I think throughout that process, I built some really great relationships and mentorships that kind of steered me in the direction of that wellness kind of aspect. I think like just some books that come to mind. There's a book about being present called How to Be Here. It's by a Buddhist monk that I'm completely forgetting the name of, but Rich Roll was a huge influence on my life. Lewis Howes, School of Greatness.
He was a prior athlete as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think he did football, and then he was like an Olympic handball player. But he has some great guests on. And then, a big part of it too was part of my mentor. The mentor that I had in mind was a guy named Carlucci Ariano. He was probably the biggest influence on my life. Started when I was about 19 and kind of took me under his wing. But he's the one who kind of got me back into my faith. I'm Catholic, and I was brought up Catholic, and I lost it during college, and he helped me get back into putting that at the center of my life, and that's been a really important aspect of the whole journey is leaning into my faith, and like I said, I have a whole list of books and podcasts that I could go through, but those are kind of at top of my mind, what I would say.
Awesome. I can link those in the show notes, so if anyone listening can go and click and see the podcast, all the content that helped you. And is there an example of like what was a difficult moment in your life that you had to get through, and what helped you kind of tough it out and get to the other side? Yeah,
another great question. I think it's actually to keep it relevant to the experience here at McCombs was I think was not scoring well on my GMAT and GREs. I was not the best test taker with my PSATs, and my SATs were not the best either. I was never someone that scored well on those standardized tests. And I remember I was working with the consultant to help me get into MBA programs, and I had taken the GMAT 3 times, and she had given me an example of a good candidate in her world, and that person had scored like a 710 on their GMAT. Wow. And just didn't have the self-awareness of how much that hurt when I heard that, because I was far below 710. I think in that moment I was pretty down, because as we know, a lot of the admissions across the country, these top schools, if you go online, and that's just the nature of the world these days, you get on these like poets and quants, and you see all these acceptances with stellar GPAs. I did not have a good GPA. And you're like, what am I doing? Like, I have no chance here. But I think the leaning into like who I was and the person that I am, and the intangibles, the stuff that's not on my resume, and kind of really sharing my story throughout the admissions process, that I think has a lot to do with the wellness aspect of my kind of philosophy in life, was like, it was a very important moment in my kind of growth as a kind of taking my next step in my journey, was seeing that like a school like McCombs saw me more than just a test score, and saw me as the person that I'm not the loudest. I'm not going to be the loudest in the room, but I really care about building really good relationships and making people feel included. So I think that was such a great lesson for me, is to not let the noise of others kind of get in the way of like your strengths and your superpowers. just kind of lean into the strengths you have, and believe in yourself. And if you have the faith, good things will happen.
I think that really shows your discipline, perseverance, patience, which I think of a good athlete has all that, and a good coach would try to coach that. I don't know if you attribute that to your playing days, but I was curious if there's parts of your college career that were kind of detrimental to your wellness, and what you think could be done better, and that bad habits are maybe being taught.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. For me, I think actually it was my first year at UVA. I was pretty miserable at UVA. Everyone's like, oh, UVA, it's such a great school. You must have loved it. I ended up loving it, but my first year was pretty tough. We had the best recruiting class in the nation that year. We came in there in college polo. You play arena. There's two different types of polo. You play arena polo and then grass polo. And in arena polo, you only play with 3 players versus 4 on grass, so you don't have that many spots. And we had a recruiting class of 4 of like the top players come in, and our starting team had just won a national championship with 3 of the best players in the nation. So great practices. It ended up being amazing for me in that aspect. But we had a captain that was like, he came from Culver, much more kind of hard ass, kind of never really showed emotion that much. He was very stern. And then I didn't have a coach that really made me feel great about how I was doing. And it was more geared towards, let's make sure the top guys are happy, and they're the ones that are winning and everything, so don't screw it up. And in many ways, you're just kind of a number on the team. So I was pretty down on myself, and that was a big reason that I left. I actually left and took a leave of absence after my first year, and went down to train in Argentina and go and do my own thing. And I think one of the lessons it learned, it's really about the people on your team and the coaches that you have. I think that's so important in athletics, is having the right leader in place, having a leader that knows how to bring out the best in their team. People have a bunch of different personalities. You can apply this to business. Some people are going to respond well to getting ripped on the sidelines and saying, hey, you didn't do your job. And then there's other people, if you rip them, they're going to shut down. And I fully admit I was one of those people. And then again, having a coach that wasn't really present was pretty tough. But that is, again, it's a lesson for me that's been so important. And finding the mentor that I did was actually this summer afterwards, was when I met Carluccio, and he was like the king of the positive leadership, and he always, phrases like, it's kind of a funny phrase that he and I used to share, was be a turtle, have a hard outer layer of skin. You're gonna have a lot of situations that you're gonna have things come in, and it's gonna hurt, but sometimes you're gonna have to harden up. And then another one he used to always be saying is reset. Last play was the last play. And kind of come with a clean slate. But that was a huge lesson for me, is finding the right people. And I'm sure other people have had experiences similar with not the best leadership. But again, if you can have that perspective, and if you're lucky to find someone to balance that and see the light on the other side, it's a really good experience to have.
I love that you can reflect on those times and take a lesson. Ideally you wouldn't have to go through that experience, but right, that you can look back and learn from it. And that was a great idea, really, to go to Argentina, and you're able to detach, get away from the situation. Yeah. And it seems like probably look at the things more objectively. Yeah. With that year off, or not off, but away from Virginia.
For sure.
Now, with your back on the wellness stuff. I want to. You're in shape. You're still like, you look like you could go play polo tomorrow if you wanted to. Is that help your wellness, and what kind of like workouts do you like to do?
Yeah, no, yeah, I love the questions, Mike. I really appreciate them. Yeah, it's a big part of who I am. I think it's the age old saying. I'm sure the people will end up listening. There's a pitcher in our class, Barrett, that I always talk to him about, and there's other great athletes like Zach Bowers, who played tennis, D3 in Virginia, and then there's like Avery, who was on the short list to be on the Olympic team. So we have a lot of other athletes that I'm sure reflect the same way. As like, once you're an athlete, you're always an athlete. And I think, again, it goes back to what I said earlier, was I always am a firm believer of action over words. Drew Brees once said, he's like, your actions speak so loudly I can't hear you. And as someone that wants to inspire and influence others, how can I ask others to raise their level, especially from the fitness side, if I'm not doing it myself? And it was ever since I left polo, it was something that I never said I didn't want to. I wanted to come back to it. Obviously, polo is a very expensive sport, and I always told myself, I want to be ready. I want to be ready if someone calls me up and needs a substitute. I want to be the one that they call up and say, man, like, dang, where's he been? And I've gotten into tennis a lot, so that's been a really helpful way for me, not only to kind of become a young athlete again, learning a new sport. I picked it up in COVID and started taking lessons, and had a really good coach from Baylor that treated me like an athlete. And I go in and she'd give me all the top juniors would come in and get lessons from her. And I was like, treat me like one of your junior players. Like, I want to come in, and if I throw up mid session, I don't care. Like, that means I'm taking myself to the next level. So my mindset has always been, how, especially from like a wellness aspect of staying fit, is how can I be the best version of myself, and how can I continue to take the next step in my growth? I've always been someone that I'm obsessed with growth, and how can I continue to have a healthy mind and body. But yeah, nowadays it's mainly playing a lot of tennis. I still ride quite a bit. I was in Florida before here during winter break, riding with some of my buddies that are still in polo. For me, I do a lot of HIIT workouts. I think those are great because you do 30-minute workout, and I'm no fitness expert, but I think pound for pound, like, those are your best workouts and most efficient workouts, especially in the NBA experience. We don't have that much time, and spending 2 hours at the gym is just not feasible. Yeah. So yeah, the HIIT and Tabata workouts are great. And then as we get older, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like, especially now that I'm in my 30s, is you got to take care of your mobility and stretch it out. I spend like 10 minutes when I play tennis stretching before, because I've already tweaked my back twice. I've pulled an abductor. Yeah, you just find a balance and figure out what works for you. But yeah, for me, I like to work out with a purpose. My purpose is being fit and ready to hit and play tennis, and be ready to be a substitute in a situation that a team calls me up. And I was like, last year I was super lucky. Like, I was a director of real estate development. I hadn't played in 5 years, a tournament, and I ended up getting called up to play for the national team, and I got to play in like the best tournament in the country, which is the U.S. Open. And I hadn't played in 6 years, but it was a validation that all that work of like staying fit, it definitely works. So
how were you feeling that next morning?
I was so sore. I was so sore, and but no, I was on cloud nine. I couldn't have asked for a better dream come true, especially 6 years later after I'd taken a step back from polo. So
that's so cool. And the tennis aspect, I think, makes a lot of sense as well, because you're still getting somewhat of a hand-eye coordination. The tennis racket's a lot bigger than what you use in polo.
right,
So
yeah,
it's probably a little easier. But and then tennis, you can play the rest of your life, like
100%.
for longevity.
100%, great sport.
Yeah, that's so cool. And then you're talking about staying flexible, staying limber. What do you think about yoga? Have you tried that out?
I did yoga for 3 years, probably 3 times a week, hot yoga, right up until COVID. Huge proponent of yoga. I think it's, me personally, I think you still need to go to the weight room. There's some people that are ripped and just do yoga, but that's just not for me. But I think it's an amazing place. Some people use it for kind of meditative purposes that I haven't as much used, and I'd like to explore more, but I like to use it as a balance. Some days your body's creaking and you got to stretch it out, and you can, and then again, I'm no yoga expert, but there's a lot of work. There's yoga that are more workout oriented too. Again, I like to have, I definitely like to have a sweat on when I'm doing yoga.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to dive more into yoga with Robert.
Yeah.
He's Robert Allen, our classmate. He's big into it, and I think he likes it for the meditative purposes too.
Yeah, he's a yoga instructor as well.
Yeah, I got a lot to learn from him, so I need to
me
dive
as well.
into that. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on like nutrition, because I think wellness, nutrition for me, it really matters. What I'm eating throughout the day will affect how I feel, how I perform. I was wondering your take on that, and what kind of diet do you ascribe to, if any?
Yeah, I am in the same kind of thinking as well. I think I've gone through my phases of doing different things. I've gone like more vegetarian. I've done some kind of more diet focused things. But one of the things, like for me, especially when I started working in an office, being used to like doing things athletically, I was very lucky that I had a high metabolism. But when you get in the office setting, it's not as easy to stay lean. So I started doing intermittent fasting. I did that. I've been doing that for a while, stopped eating breakfast. And I lost the most weight and got lean when I was eating at like 1 p.m. in the afternoon, my lunch. And then I'd eat like 5 or 6, and then I wouldn't eat until the next day. One of the lessons I've learned is like you gain the most weight when you eat late night, and it's tough. That was one of the things I had trouble with last semester, was my schedule was just completely like turned upside down, and I was staying up late, and like around, if you eat at 6 and then 6 hours later you're still up, you have a craving to eat. And for me, it was definitely a struggle. But yeah, for me, it's finding a balance in what you eat. I meal prep a lot. Like today I had my meal was like quinoa, avocado, cucumbers, and some protein, and like I mix some mango in for like a fruit aspect, and like a avocado oil, like vinaigrette.
Sounds delicious.
But yeah, I think, yeah, you find a balance, because especially here, you're gonna want to go out with friends. And last night, like I pigged out at Chili's. Like it was not a great healthy meal, but yeah, you find a balance, and it's like anything, it's consistency. If you're consistently eating well and having a balanced diet that works for you, it's okay to have some ice cream here and there, and have some cookies or chips and everything, but you got to figure out what makes sense for you.
Yeah, and the NBA schedule can be kind of crazy. It is nice that they have like a couple fridges here and microwaves, so you can meal prep and bring your food, and you don't have to worry about eating out all day, or just maybe not eating throughout the day.
For sure.
But did you feel that your energy levels changed when you started intermittent fasting?
Starting out's tough. For sure, around 11, you get super hungry, and like I would get a headache. But I think in some ways, yeah. I think for me, I noticed that like I was able to keep weight off better with that aspect. And I think it too would depend on the day, just on like if I'm working out in the morning, maybe I'll throw in a smoothie or something like that after a workout. But yeah, it depended on the day. But I think it was just for me, I was able to, with intermittent fasting, I was just able to maintain a little bit better. And again, for me, it was finding that consistency, and consistency for me meant just doing the intermittent fasting for the most part, most days.
No, yeah, I've tried it. I feel that 11 a.m. hunger often, so I haven't really stuck with it. So I might try that out this semester. Yeah. But thanks, Todd, so much for sharing your story, sharing your wellness journey. Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts before we close it out?
No, I think for me, wellness, I'm really passionate about it. It's definitely core to who I am. And again, wellness for me, it's mind, body, spirit. I was watching like this message that really resonated of like when you say like, what is happiness? And it's finding peace with yourself, with others, and for me, it's being at peace with God. And the peace with yourself, it has to deal with it's your mind, body, spirit. Are you at peace with yourself? And that wellness aspect is core to finding success in whatever we do, whether it's being a really good husband, whether it's being a really good son, or being a really good candidate for the next job, right? If you're taking care of yourself, that's the first most important aspect that you got to take care of. And from there, I think you have a lot better chances of finding success in whatever you do. But yeah, no, like I said, Mike, this has been awesome. Like, I'm really excited to see where we go with this journey with the podcast. It's really important to share everyone's stories, and it's a great avenue for all of us to just kind of reflect and share in the vulnerabilities of going through the ups and downs of MBA. So I appreciate you, Mike.
Yeah, it's a great first guest to let people know what we're about at the Wellness Collective. And if anyone, if they're in a hard time or if you're feeling good, whatever, just want to stay on the path, come talk to us. We're going to have some events this year. So hope to see a lot of people out there. And thanks so much, Todd.
No, thank you. All right.
Thank you for listening to the McCombs Wellness Collective podcast, where we record weekly episodes during the semester to promote healthy habits and learn about personal wellness journeys. Stay well, my friends, and hook 'em horns.